Do you do anything differently when working with students who are deafblind?
Yes. Initially it looks a little bit the same, where I come and I meet the child, I meet the teachers and the family, and I start observing and getting a feel for the child. So I do that with everybody. That's where a lot of the similarities end, because when someone has a child who is deafblind in their class, a lot of times it's the first time they've ever had that experience, and they don't know what to do. They feel lost, and they need a lot of support. So I come to the classrooms more often, especially at the beginning. I give them more resources, things to read, videotapes maybe I send them. I coach them a lot more. I give them more techniques to use. I do a lot more collaborating. That has been an interesting challenge, finding ways to really come into someone's classroom and really coach them and model for them and collaborate. A lot of times after school, talking with them. Some people need hand-holding, other people, no, they're okay, but they need to hear more, what's going on and why you might do something different. Or sometimes I actually make materials for people. If they're going to have an object calendar, the teacher will be oftentimes overwhelmed, so I'll make that for them. So I'll bring them some materials as well. A child who is blind or has low vision, a lot of times I'll bring them textural papers and things that I want them, to try using instead of having the child paint. So I do a lot more than I would say for my typical kind of garden variety kid who's deaf or hard of hearing.
Do your services vary on students' age? If so, how?
They vary because the younger the child, the more they need, and the more the team needs. They don't vary in the types of things maybe that I do. I'm still going to be going out there and coaching the team. I'm still going to try to show the team what the world is like from that child's perspective. For example, a very young child, say, that I've worked with who was 4 years old. And in the child's preschool, they want to move her around from here to there, and we're going to go to this setting, and now we're going to be over here, now we're going to take your hands, we're going to do this. She's so young, she can't really express to them that this is kind of freaking her out. She just cries. So for someone that young, I want to spend more time in there and very gently show them that the child is scared. The child doesn't know what's going on when I'm in say a stander, and now all of a sudden I'm moved over here. So I put more time into those little details when they're very young, because typically those are the teachers who really have very little experience. And someone who's very accustomed to, I do this type of a routine, sometimes has a difficult time with saying, oh, I have to really slow this down for this child. So for the younger ones, I do put a lot more time, and I give them more very tiny, very specific things to work with the child. The older children, I may do some of that too, to help with the teacher if they've never had a child who's deaf and blind, but not quite as much. Some of those kids now, have been in school for a while, and so hopefully people have, one teacher talk to the next teacher and so forth. So the little ones get more time.
When sharing your expertise with educational teams and the students' family members, how do you make sure your goals and activities are integrated into a student's home and school life?
This is one that I struggle with. So I've gone through a lot of different ways. For example, some teams ask me to write goals, and then that's not so difficult because then the goals are right there and we all know that these are the goals we're working towards. Other teams ask me to review the goals they have written and see if I want to make any changes. And so that, again, that's not so difficult. A lot of times, though, people don't ask me to be involved with the goals. And this could be my own fault for not kind of pushing that. And that's kind of one of the things I struggle with. Do I push for that? Do I back away? I'm not always sure. So a lot of times it turns out It's more that I'm giving suggestions or activities to do to work on communication development, to work on understanding, how to connect with others or something. And this has been really interesting because a lot of times I will look, people will tell me, well, little child X doesn't necessarily need, for example, a protocol for people to approach them so they're not startled. They will say to me, well, they can hear me, they know I'm here. And it's very difficult for me to try to explain it to them sometimes in a way that doesn't sound pushy. Because I know in my heart that the child is going to get startled. I know in my heart that the child needs things to be perhaps more tactile, or to have some sense, or to go slower. And those are the kinds of things that people have a hard time grasping. So the things that I have come up with to kind of help with this is I work on getting to know the teachers and the parents. I'm better with the teachers. There seems around here kind of a culture that we don't spend as much time with the parents, and I'm trying to change that. But anyway, going back. When I'm working with somebody, I try to get to know them, and I kind of plant little seeds of thought to kind of get started. Then I started realizing that works, but it takes a long time. So I've gone to something a little more concrete. I give them homework, and I do coaching. This is kind of my new one. And I write it down. So the way that seems to be working right now is if I'm discussing something with a teacher, I just write it down right there. Well, what things can we do right now to work on this? And I never give them more than 3 things. And I usually keep it to 1 to 2. Then I come back in a couple of weeks and I follow up. Follow-up is really key. I do email follow-up and I come back and I follow up. I also have a couple teams where we're meeting once a month. It's the teacher and the assistant. I'm not getting the whole team, but at least I'm getting the teacher and the assistant, and sometimes a parent, depending on the team, and we really talk about what's going on. And I'm finding that if I just sit back for a while and just really take it in and listen, that's really helping a lot. And if I act a little bit like a coach, let them do what they're doing, watch for a while, and then coach them a little bit. I'm still working on some new ideas. I want to get a little more step-by-step for them, so I'm still debating on that. But I think right now what really is working the best is when I'm involved in writing the goals. Then we can talk about my rationale for that, doing observations and telling them what I see, asking them their rationale for what they're doing, and coaching them to kind of make some shifts, and then writing it down, and joking with them about, okay, this is your homework assignment. And I have a little form I use now that's kind of funny, and it has just 3 spots. And what I've also found works, and we all know praise works really well. We use it with our children. We sometimes forget to use it with our colleagues. So for example, this one woman worked really hard, and she was able to do 1 out of the 3 things I wanted. And so I praised her, and I said, let's not worry about these other 2. Keep working on that one. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to take a long time. But the payoff was wonderful because I came back in a couple of weeks. She was thrilled. In fact, she was thrilled to see me, right? She didn't have to worry that, I didn't do what she wanted. So then I let her keep that one thing for the whole month. Just work on this. You're doing great. And so praise also really helps. So writing it down, coaching them, praising them, and where I can, getting it in the actual goals, and really listening. That's been one of my newest things. Sometimes I talk too much when I go in there because I'm so intent on what, I want all this to happen, and I have to remember that they need time to see the value of some of these things, and they don't always. So if I can kind of step back for a little bit and let them talk to me, that helps a lot.